Ever wonder what happens to like those old chemicals you find under the lab sink or the waste from, a manufacturing plant? Today, we're taking a deep dive into the world of chemical waste disposal with GIC Medical Waste Disposal.
Yeah, it's not something most people think about
Yeah.
until there's a problem, right? Like you see a news story about contamination, or maybe a company gets hit with a big fine for not disposing of stuff properly.
I was actually reading an article the other day about, I think it was a biotech startup, and they had to like completely halt their research because they didn't handle some solvents correctly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, ended up costing them a ton of money. I think that's when you realize, like, okay, we need an expert to handle this.
Definitely. That's when a company like GIC becomes essential. They're kind of like the unsung heroes of safety and compliance, making sure businesses can operate smoothly and not worry about those kinds of issues.
And they work with such a wide range of clients, too. I was looking at their website, and they work with research labs, manufacturers, hospitals, universities.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, basically anyone handling materials that, need that extra level of care.
Yeah. And what's really interesting to me is their focus on creating customized solutions. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach, which makes sense.
Right.
I mean, a small lab with a few beakers of waste has totally different needs than a huge manufacturing plant.
Absolutely. Like, let's say you're a research lab developing, I don't know, some new pharmaceutical, and you have waste that needs very specific handling, maybe even special permits. That's where GIC comes in.
Exactly. They'd analyze it, figure out what's in it, and then design a plan that checks all the boxes in terms of regulations.
So they take care of everything, identifying it, getting the right containers, making sure it's transported safely.
And of course, disposing of it in a way that's safe for the environment.
Speaking of disposal, it's not as easy as like just taking it to the landfill, is it?
No, no, not at all. It's way more complex than that. They use these, what are they called, advanced disposal methods. And while they don't get into the nitty-gritty on the website, I've read about techniques like chemical stabilization, where they actually neutralize the hazardous parts, or even using really high temperatures to incinerate certain types of waste, all to minimize the environmental impact, of course.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it, how much goes on behind the scenes to keep things running safely.
It really is, and I think that's a key takeaway here. Proper chemical waste disposal, it's not just about avoiding those fines or bad press, it's about protecting everyone and the environment, now and for the future.
And just so we're clear, when we talk about chemical waste, what exactly are we talking about? It's more than just like old cleaning products, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a really broad term. Includes all sorts of things.
Mm.
Solvents, acids, bases, heavy metals, certain pharmaceuticals, anything that could be dangerous if it's not handled and disposed of properly.
So going back to GIC, it seems like they really emphasize taking that burden off of businesses, especially with their no contract philosophy.
Which is huge,
Hmm.
especially for businesses that are just starting out, or maybe their waste volume fluctuates. Not being tied to a long-term contract, that can be a game changer, both for their flexibility and, cost-wise.
It's like they're saying, look, we're so confident in what we do, you can try us out, no strings attached.
Exactly. And if things change, just shoot them an email or give them a call,
Yeah.
and they can adjust the services. It's that kind of customer focus that can really make a difference, especially in an industry that can sometimes feel a little rigid.
Right. Okay, so let's dig a little deeper into their actual process. They break it down into three main stages on their website: identification and classification, secure handling and transport, and then the actual disposal. It's interesting that it all starts with knowing exactly what you're dealing with.
Absolutely. And that's where GIC's experience is so important. They have these teams that come in and they can accurately identify and classify the waste. Is it flammable? Is it
Right.
corrosive? Is it toxic? Each of those categories has specific handling and disposal procedures, and getting it wrong can be, well,
A disaster waiting to happen.
exactly.
It's like they're doing a chemical fingerprint analysis or something.
That's a great way to put it. And once they know what they're dealing with, that takes us to the next step: getting it transported safely. I mean, think about it. A truck full of hazardous waste gets into an accident. That could be really bad.
Yeah, that's not something you want to see on the news.
Definitely not. And GIC seems to get that because they make safety and compliance a priority. They use those specialized containers, have trained people handling everything, and stick to strict rules about the routes they could take.
So no cutting corners.
Nope. They're doing things by the book and then some. And that goes back to what we were saying before about peace of mind. A business can relax knowing that GIC is taking care of everything the right way.
Okay, so we've covered identification, handling, transportation. Now for the big finish, the actual disposal. They mention these environmentally safe disposal methods, but they don't go into too much detail. What can you tell us about these advanced methods?
Well, it's pretty cool, actually. One method they might use is called chemical stabilization. Basically, they treat the waste to neutralize it, make the dangerous parts harmless. Like, let's say a company has a bunch of acidic waste. They could add a base to neutralize it, so it's safe to dispose of.
Well, it's kind of like doing chemistry in reverse, breaking down those hazardous components.
Exactly. Another thing they might do is high-temperature incineration. They use that for specific types of waste that can't be neutralized. It's all very controlled, using super high heat to break the waste down into basic elements. That way, they release as few pollutants as possible.
Both of those sound incredibly complicated.
They are. And that's why it's so important to choose a company that really knows what they're doing, that has the right expertise in technology. You need someone who understands each method, all the regulations, and what the impact on the environment could be.
It's not enough to just make the waste disappear. It has to be done responsibly, right? To prevent problems down the line.
Exactly. And that's what a lot of people don't think about. It's that out of sight, out of mind mentality.
Hmm.
But improper chemical waste disposal can have some serious long-term consequences.
Contaminated water, polluted soil, even health issues for people.
Exactly. It's about protecting future generations as well.
Now, they have an FAQ section on their website, and someone asked about regulations in Canada specifically. It seems like it can be pretty complicated.
Yeah, it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all situation.
Yeah.
In Canada, a lot of the regulations are handled at the provincial and territorial level, although they do get guidance from the Canadian Council of Ministers of the Environment.
So if a business operates in multiple provinces, things could get tricky because they might have to follow different rules in different places.
Right. And that's another area where a company like GIC can be a huge help. They have a whole team dedicated to staying up to date on all the latest regulations, so businesses don't have to worry about it, no matter where they're located.
That takes a huge load off their plate. They also talk about sharps disposal things like needles, blades, that kind of thing. It sounds like there are some very specific procedures for dealing with those.
Oh, absolutely, and for good reason. Sharps can cause some nasty injuries if someone gets stuck by a needle. And there's the risk of infection spreading. GIC stresses how important it is to use those puncture-resistant containers, dispose of sharps immediately, and label everything correctly just to minimize the risk.
So it's all about keeping everyone safe. The healthcare workers, the people handling the waste, and the general public.
Exactly. And it makes you realize they're handling other stuff too, like biohazardous and infectious waste.
Which is a whole other level of don't touch. What's their approach to dealing with that type of waste?
They're incredibly careful. They have these really rigorous protocols to make sure that biohazardous waste is treated safely and according to all the rules. That means everything from separating it correctly and keeping it contained to using specialized treatments. Autoclaving, for example, where they use high-pressure steam to sterilize everything.
Wow, so they really have a system for everything.
They really do. And one thing they emphasize is that their team is trained to deal with all of that, so the businesses don't have to figure it out on their own.
It's like having their own waste management department without the hassle of actually running it.
Exactly. They can focus on what they do best, knowing that their waste is being taken care of responsibly and ethically.
And that reminds me, their no contract policy is really something. They even mention it in the FAQs, saying that they want to earn business through their service, not by locking people into contracts.
It's not something you see very often. It shows that they're confident in the quality of their work.
It's like they're saying, we're good at this, and you'll stay with us because you want to, not because you have to.
Right. And that builds trust. When a company is transparent, communicates well, and consistently delivers, that's how they earn their clients' trust.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of chemical waste disposal, what's the one big takeaway for our listeners? What should they remember from all of this?
I think the main thing is this. Chemical waste disposal is not something to take lightly. It's complicated, it often gets overlooked, but it's crucial for protecting people and the environment.
It's like that saying, there's no such thing as away when you throw something away, especially when it comes to chemical waste.
Exactly. But the good news is there are companies like GIC that are dedicated to making sure that away is a safe and responsible place. They're the ones working behind the scenes to make sure that businesses can operate sustainably and do the right thing.
They've taken something that a lot of people don't even want to think about and made it understandable and manageable, maybe even a little bit interesting.
It's all about changing how we see waste. It's not just a problem to get rid of, it's an opportunity to innovate, to manage things responsibly, and to create a healthier planet.
And it starts with being informed, choosing the right people to work with, and understanding that even something like waste disposal can make a real difference in the world.
Well said.
And there you have it, everyone, our deep dive into the world of chemical waste disposal. We hope you found it informative and eye-opening. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.